Hello, all you awesome listeners. Thanks for tuning in to the NetSuite Podcast. I'm your host, Kendall Fisher, and in honor of the NBA playoffs kicking off this week, our guest on this episode of the NetSuite Podcast is CFO of the Golden State Warriors, Jennifer Cabalquinto. Now, I know you're probably asking yourself, what's the CFO of a basketball team do? And is she somehow part of the Warriors' massive success? Worry not, she answers all of these questions and more. Also diving into some of the back office challenges, Cabalquinto explains why the Warriors ultimately chose NetSuite to manage their business, including the need for a cloud-based system with simple integration and ease of use, as well as a business partner with a shared value for social responsibility. All of that coming up next, so stay tuned.
You're listening to the NetSuite Podcast, where we discuss what's happening within NetSuite, why we're doing it, and where we're heading in the future. We'll dive into the details about the software and the people at NetSuite who are behind all the moving parts. We'll also feature customer growth stories, discussing the ups and downs of running a company and how one integrated system can help your business continue to scale.
Before we get into this episode with the CFO of the Golden State Warriors, Jennifer Cabalquinto, I want to thank our sponsors over at Blue Microphones. If you're a storyteller, you probably know Blue Mics for their iconic Yeti microphone, which has helped millions of people find and amplify their voices. If you're thinking about creating your own podcast, or maybe practicing calling some basketball games, then you need to check out Blue's new Yeti Caster, the complete mic and boom arm system ready to connect to your laptop, bringing the ultimate broadcast studio setup to your home or office. That's what I'm using right now. Sounds pretty darn good, don't you think? To get your hands on one of these setups, visit bluedesigns.com and use code podcast at checkout for a special price. Once again, that's bluedesigns.com. Use code podcast at checkout for a special price. Hi, Jennifer. Thank you so much for joining us here on the NetSuite Podcast. As I told you guys earlier, Jennifer is the CFO of the Golden State Warriors, which I can't wait to talk about. But before we get into that, Jennifer, I always like to start things off by helping our listeners get to know you a little more. So let's take it back a bit. Where did you grow up? Where did you attend college? And what did you study?
Wow, that's a lot. So I was born in the Philippines, grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I attended the State University of New York at Binghamton, and I was majored in accounting.
So I know I read a little bit about you going into this, obviously have to do my research. What about your childhood and your parents influenced your decision to get into accounting?
You know, I grew up wanting to be a journalist. I actually wanted to be a news anchor.
That's what I wanted to be.
Right?
Funny enough.
Right? But my parents wouldn't let me do it. And you can't tell on the podcast, but I am Asian, and part of our culture is, I think, to be a bit deferential to our parents, and I wanted to please them. And so my dad always said that an accounting degree, you could always get a job, and that was ultimately what they wanted, was that we get an education and be able to take care of ourselves. My dad was an accountant, so I became an accountant.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I know the feeling. My parents highly suggested journalism wasn't the route to go.
But look at you now.
Exactly. So what was your career path after graduating?
Well, you know, funny enough, I got recruited by Ernst & Young. And I say funny because my accounting grades were not very good. But yeah, it didn't make sense to me through the textbooks. And so I really struggled, with accounting, but I loved like everything else, liberal arts education. So I studied in East Asian studies, minored in women's studies. I took a lot of other courses. And so I was able to bring my grade point average up with everything else. And so, being recruited by Ernst & Young was surprising to all of my accounting classmates because it's a pretty prestigious firm. It was, at the time, part of the Big Six, and it really was important in terms of validating, your beginning of an accounting career. But it was my East Asian Studies minor that actually differentiated me from the other accounting students. And so sometimes it's really important that while you may be making a compromise in accounting was a compromise for me, but I didn't let that stop me from following other pursuits. And that combination actually served a really great purpose.
So how was having EY as the foundation of your career? How did that kind of boost you, and where did you go next?
Yeah, having something like Ernst & Young as your first job on your resume is a real credibility builder. And so I really think, that experience is really setting me off on a great career path. I ended up not getting my CPA, but being able to have E&Y was sort of that, validator and equalizer to not having gotten my CPA. One of the things that while at Ernst & Young was that I was on a lot of really active engagements, bringing people public or doing debt offerings and doing really, really interesting work.
Wow.
And I always said that was like a substitute for the credentials. And so having E&Y on my resume has been awesome.
So I'm hearing, you were in professional services, obviously, and then in that, I know you moved into entertainment media, right? Telemundo for a little while.
Yeah.
Nothing about sports, though. So how did you end up as the CFO of the Golden State Warriors with, this kind of very different background?
Yeah, this is my first sports job. My background is in entertainment, and actually I was in television, and then I had my first and only child and wanted to move, I needed a new role. And the role that was available at I was with NBC Universal, was the CFO for Universal Studios Hollywood, which is the theme park division.
Right.
I really didn't want to take that job because it's not considered a content job. It's a real consumer facing business. But again, sometimes you have to make a compromise for various reasons. This one was for my family. It allowed me to stay in LA and travel less. And it turns out that background of being a CFO for a theme park really gave me sort of the skill sets that translated really well to a sports team. I mean, think about it. We sell tickets, we sell retail, food and beverage. And oh, by the way, the Warriors were building this large new arena in San Francisco.
Right.
And theme parks were constantly doing large, attractions developments, which was nothing more than a very big construction project. And so that background actually made me the right fit for the Warriors.
But so obviously your family, that's a big influence.
Yeah.
This role also lands you as one of the very few female CFOs in basketball, and as you know, in business in general. But did that affect your decision at all?
Actually not, because when I took this role, the Warriors were a regional team. They're not the global brand they are today.
Right.
And so the draw for me was really what the Warriors were embarking on, which was this new arena. And it needed to be 100% privately financed. And my background has always been working in a large conglomerate, right? So NBC was owned by GE, NBC Universal with Comcast. So I didn't have to go out to the marketplace to raise capital. And for me, that was a hole in the resume that I wanted to be able to fill. And so that was really what pulled me into the role, not sports or, the team itself.
Got it.
I always tell everybody, my husband and my son love my job more than I love my job. And I think that's true today.
Yeah. How do you lead in a business that is, generally speaking, mostly male? That's male dominated. How do you lead as a female?
I honestly don't think about it. It's the question should be, how do I lead?
I love that.
No man wakes up every morning thinking, how am I going to lead as a man?
Yeah.
They just think about, how am I going to lead today?
Yeah.
And what are the things that I need to convey to my team to make them, move forward and align with the things that we need to get accomplished. And so, I don't think about it. I also have grown up with 4 brothers. So
Wow.
I think I've, 2 older, 2 younger. We're all a year apart. I feel like I've been competing with boys my whole life. I don't even notice it at all.
That, and that's kind of how we got to go with that mentality. Yeah. We, it's been far too long now. Got to equalize the playing field. And it starts with us, right? It starts with us just saying, no, I'm just a person that's here leading and doing this. And it's not a male dominated world. I'm just here doing my job and doing the best at it.
That's right. But it's also important for us, women who are in leadership roles, to use that platform to I think to shine the light on unconscious bias. I know with my peer group, I can point out things in a way that, allows them to see maybe their approach, it has, some bias in it. And it's not to demonize anybody. It's really around just creating some transparency and awareness of the issue.
Yeah, because once you create that shift, that's when our mentality changes along with it. It's no longer this male, female, it's just people.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
So diving into your role as the CFO, my first golden question, if you will, how does the role of the CFO of an MBA team differ from other CFO roles? What does a role like this entail?
It's incredibly different. But what I also say is it's probably very different for every team because every team is structured differently,
right,
and their ownership group is different. So I can only speak for the Warriors and our ownership group. And I think every team, I think, ultimately wants to win. And so your stakeholder, your goal is a little bit different. When you're in a corporation, you're trying to deliver profits. You're trying to deliver for shareholders. When you're a team, you're trying to deliver a championship. And sometimes that means making business decisions that may not be the best business decisions that a normal company would make.
Right.
So maybe investing more in player payroll when, you're not quite sure of the outcome, or how do you allocate resources to make sure that, the end game, which is winning, is achievable, but also still, making sure that the fan experience is invested in and the employee experience is also invested in. So I think there's that allocation of resources that occurs in all CFO roles that you have to be cognizant of. But I think there's a passion decision that happens in sports, and because of that drive to win, that maybe is, incongruous with normal business making decisions.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people would connect the dots between the operations side of things and winning. Yeah. I don't think a lot of people would put those two together. I actually don't even think a lot of people think about the fact that there is a CFO of the Golden State Warriors. You know what I mean? And
sure.
That there are this business operations team that works behind the scenes.
Sure.
How does that affect, let's say, recruiting top talent? Like, how does all the way back to, the business operations side and making sure you have all your financials in place and all of the correct business processes in place, how does that affect the recruiting top talent and then ultimately winning?
Sure. I think, sports has really changed over, I would say, the last decade because business people have paid real money for these teams and they want them to operate like real businesses. And so, I think that's really influenced how we recruit and how we look at talent. And so, like for the Warriors, our CEO, Joe Lacob, and owner, has always said it's people first. In terms of building a championship organization, both on the court and off the court, right? Both in business and in basketball. And so you look at, he recruited our president, Rick Welts, who just got inducted into the Hall of Fame, living legend of the NBA. But that's recruiting top talent to build the business side. And then he recruited Bob Myers, and he's another one who is high character to head our basketball operations. And it starts with recruiting great talent. Bob always says he recruits for character first, and I think that permeates across the organization. Yeah. And then he recruits for tall because you can't teach tall. But I think it's definitely something that we abide by both in the business side and in the basketball side.
Well, and people first is a mentality that no matter where you are, in what industry, I mean, you could be selling software, but who's going to man, you know what I mean? Who's going to man that software? Who's going to be implementing that software?
That's exactly right. It translates across everything. And even in basketball, if you think about the Bob saying it's people first and character first, one of our hallmarks as a team is the fact that is our strength in numbers. It's the high character individuals. It's how well our players get along and the teamwork, how they collaborate, how they're willing to all sacrifice for each other. That makes a winning team. And that's the same on the business side. Our values are based on team, and we always say team stands for trust, empathy, accountability, and modesty, which, is really a nod to humility. And so that for us is team, and I think it embodies everything that we as an organization value.
I'm going to quote Oprah really quick and say that it was a tweetable moment. She always goes, tweet, tweet. And I'm going to say that I love that. That's solid stuff. So you came on in August of 2013, a few years before the Golden State Warriors would win its first championship since 1975, which is crazy because they're such a strong team now. But of course, it takes every piece of the puzzle, like we talked about, to do that, including business and financial side of the team. What did you walk into when you walked in 2013? What challenges did you face pre, this kind of Golden State golden era?
Sure. The Golden State Warriors is a global brand, huge, but it's really, at least when I first entered, a small, mid-sized company. And so you were faced with sort of small company challenges. And the new ownership came in and really wanted us to put in the systems, the processes, sort of in place in order for us to scale and grow. And when I walked in, we needed to really work on our general ledger processes, sort of all the back office systems needed a lot of work. And so that to me was actually surprising because again, you think, NBA team and
you would think it was like this massive corporation. You wouldn't think mid-market.
Yeah, really small. And it needs to stay small because again, it goes back to how do you allocate your resources to win? And, with any team, you've got to be able to invest on court performance. And so for us, making sure that we put in the right systems in order for us to be able to scale without, exponentially growing our headcount and our back office costs. And that was really critical as we embarked on this journey of growth.
If you've ever met a famous athlete at a corporate event or gotten an official autograph, chances are Steiner Sports made it happen. Here's Brandon Steiner.
We believe that there's magic in the moments that sports creates. We get customers closer to the game and help companies use the power of sports to grow their business. We've been in business 30 years, and we've had multiple systems to keep track of all the athletes and all of our customers. Multiple systems means multiple headaches. So we made the move to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite lets us replace all of our finance, inventory, and CRM functions with one convenient system. Now all the departments can see the same data. And if I have a question about our business, I can get the answer quickly.
This month, NetSuite is offering a free 60-minute business review with an expert in your industry to identify opportunities to turbocharge your growth. To get your free review, go to netsuite.com/Steiner. That's netsuite.com/Steiner. netsuite.com/Steiner.
So when did you begin looking into new financial software to assist in that? When did you go, okay, we need to put a new process in place without growing our headcount exponentially? When did that kind of happen?
Almost immediately. I started in August of 2013, and we were just wrapping up the 2012-13 season's audit. And so I came in right at the tail end of that. And I was surprised at how the team was struggling to get me the information I need. Whenever I start a new job, I always want a big balance sheet review because that's where the bodies are buried. And so
another good tip for any, financial leader, well, any business leader, but any financial leader, really good, solid tip.
Yeah. So I asked for one and it was like crickets. I was waiting and waiting. I was like, wait, why can't we do a balance sheet review?
Yeah.
And so just the lack of transparency, the clumsiness of how the systems were working and talking to each other and gathering information from the disparate sort of sources led me to immediately say, this is not sustainable. And especially I am just so used to having data readily available. I was with the theme park division right before this. And so having, a tremendous amount of data so that we can iterate every day how we operated our business was just something I was accustomed to. And when you get into the basketball world and you're like, well, how did we do, yesterday? And it's like, well, we'll be able to tell you in a week. And I'll be, that's not good business.
So what systems were you on?
Can I say that?
Yes, you can. Yes, we are fully open here.
Yeah, well, we were on a very old version of Great Plains.
Okay.
And I think more importantly, it was poorly implemented without a real thought to how we were going to scale and use it appropriately. We also just had like no real procurement process. We had very little, we had no integration to, our order entry systems.
All of the other systems.
Yeah.
So you start almost immediately looking into new solutions. Can you tell me a few of the solutions you were looking into?
Sure. We looked obviously at Great Plains as, and looking at their upgrade. And we actually tried to fix it for a little while. And then we started looking at moving towards a cloud-based solution. I think for us, especially because we wanted something that could scale with us, we did not want to grow our IT organization to support back office functions. We really wanted our IT organization to continue to focus on the consumer experience and sort of technology solutions that really support both the fans, our clients, and frankly the players, as opposed to the financials. And so that's why we started moving towards cloud-based solutions, and we looked at all of them. And I think NetSuite really just came out on top for us.
And I have to ask why. And other than our founder Evan Goldberg being a huge
fan.
Yeah, he is a huge warrior. I mean, watching him interview Bob Myers was like my favorite thing. He could just tell that he was so excited to do that.
Yeah.
That was awesome. But what was it ultimately about NetSuite?
Well, I mean, I think one, it checked off all the boxes for us in terms of its ability to scale, to be to get transparency, to the integration. Our team found it really easy to use, and for me, that counts because no one you don't get the power of a system if your people aren't using it.
Well, and especially when you're making that huge transition off of another system onto a new system. I mean,
Exactly.
You gotta have people behind it.
Exactly.
People first.
That's exactly right. And then I really like to align. We look at our vendors not as vendors. We're a small company, and so our vendors really become our business partners. And you want your business partners to be aligned with you. I think we really felt that with NetSuite. We knew they were going to be there to help support us all along the way. We were doing it mid-season, the conversion, and so that was, that was something that we were really concerned about. But they really gave us the assurance that they would hold our hands and get us through it. And I also think, when you look at company values, and it was touched on today, we really do view ourselves as a community asset. And it's really nice to partner with organizations who share that same value of social responsibility. Yeah. And I think NetSuite really does that. And it resonated with me and our team.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I was going to, it's more than just implementing a software and moving on. You're constantly working with NetSuite. I mean, they're managing your entire business processes and your financials, and it's important to have that person-to-person relationship too. And there are so many similar, shared qualities and visions for, both companies. Maybe that stems from Evan being such a big supporter of the organization.
Big fan.
Exactly.
I also think just being a good person, and sort of this real thought to we have to do more and better and wherever we can, and so the social aspect actually really matters when we do our vendor selections.
Yeah, and we're doing big things this year now with our social impact and the way that we're helping support nonprofits globally. So very big here at NetSuite. What components of NetSuite did you implement, and how did that help you overcome some of those challenges you mentioned earlier?
Sure. Well, we implemented NetSuite's ERP modules. And for us, certainly for me, having the integrations into our order entry system gave me real transparency. I think I mentioned we are building 100% privately financed arena in San Francisco. And so cash flow management is really, really critical for me. And that's an area where we really struggled prior to NetSuite. But being able to pull in all of that data real time and being able to report it, see it anywhere, any time of day is really critical to the projects that we're working on today. And so that was a huge win. I've talked a lot about like multiple revenue streams that we have, and NetSuite's ability to handle all the various different streams, different billing cycles, different revenue recognition rules really allowed us to simplify that process. And so even though our revenue has been growing, we haven't had to scale that group.
Yeah.
And so that's been a huge win for us as well.
So talking about efficiencies, you kind of maintained headcount. And you limited the amount of, work, time, energy that goes into the various processes.
Yeah, increased productivity is huge for us, and NetSuite's really provided that, and just timeliness and accuracy. Anytime you have to take data from one place and get it into another place allows room for error. And so when that's a seamless integration, there's a real credibility now to the data. When you're not spending so much time reconciling, you're actually spending time analyzing. And so the value we add has increased exponentially.
Yeah. So where do you, now that time and energy you're saving with NetSuite, where are you putting that now?
Yeah, it's really one, analysis and making sure that we identify areas where we can be more efficient, where we may want to spend less and allocate it to different areas of the organization. We now can be at the business table as we evaluate new opportunities. Finance needs to be a value-added organization. I've never consider us the back office.
Yeah.
We should be part of, all of the strategic decision making that the organization makes. And that's only possible if you find the time. And so you have to streamline all of your day-to-day processes so that you have the time to be at those meetings and have that seat at the table.
Right. So what would you say to another company who's considering NetSuite? Doesn't have to be, an MBA team, doesn't, but just anybody who's considering it, especially of the same size, kind of mid-market, not big org, but on the smaller side.
Yeah, I would say that we've never regretted the decision. And as with any system conversion, there are going to be bumps along the way. I don't care what anybody tells you. It is never seamless. It is never 100% right from day one. It just isn't. But having a business partner that will be with you to smooth out those bumps, I think, is the most critical. So if someone sells you that this thing is plug and play, don't believe it. It just doesn't. It doesn't exist.
Right.
But if they sell you that they will be there for you, I think that's what NetSuite told us, and that's what we got, and so we were really pleased with it.
Love that. I want to move back into kind of a little, to wrap things up here in the last few minutes, a little bit about the basketball side of things. So as we talked about earlier, a successful team is built from all of the pieces of the puzzle. What are you guys doing right on the business side of things that transpires onto the court? We talked about it, the hiring the top talent, whether it's, off the court or on the court. But what are some of the other things that people just don't see?
We're living a sports moment. People who live in Chicago know what that feels like. This is a sports moment for the Bay Area. And I think for us, it's really important to understand that sports moments don't last forever. And so how do you stay in the hearts and minds of your community and have them support you when you're not winning? And I think on the business side, we really focus on how do we continue, because we're a community asset. There's a business side to that. That means delivering for our partners. And that means being the right brand for them. It means delivering for our community so that when we need their support, even though we're not winning, they'll still be there for us. And that means, the things that we do to support schools and other organizations throughout the Bay Area. So as a business, I think we're really cognizant of the fact that we're living in this moment. And so we need to, optimize this moment, right? And monetize it, right? But also really think about how do we continue to invest in community engagement, build that community goodwill that I think is really true to our core, so that when things may not be as great, that we're still, in the hearts and minds of the Bay Area fans.
Yeah, and that's something that I actually talked with Bob Myers about, which for the NetSuite listeners, you guys can go check out that interview on GrowWire. But I talked with him a little bit about when you go from being good to being great, how do you maintain that title of greatness without worrying so much about, don't make mistakes or, getting rid of the noise that's the greatest ever? How do you continue along that path, especially on the business side of things?
Yeah. Bob talks a lot about how hard it is to go from good to great.
Yeah.
But sustaining greatness may be even harder.
I mean, he described it as standing at the top of Mount Everest and just hoping nobody pushes you off, which I was like, that is terrifying, but also a really great metaphor.
Well, I think that what we caution ourselves is to not be risk averse. And so once you attain, if you truly believe that you've attained greatness, then maybe you will be less willing to take risks. And we as an organization have taken a lot of risks to get to where we are. The good thing is that I don't think our ownership truly believes we've hit where we needed to be. I mean, they are constantly pushing us, right? Joe just dreams big, and he dreams big for all of us. And so I think that just drives us to continue to strive to be better. Yeah. I think we also, part of our VC sort of core, because of our ownership group, is around being pretty entrepreneurial and be willing to fast fail. Right. But he also talks that, we think about failure is never fatal, but success is also never final. Right.
I'm not kidding. That quote hangs in my room. It's my parents. I went to my very first soccer camp when I was probably 8 years old, and my parents gave me that. Yeah. I think is it a John Wooden? I don't know who. John Wooden has said it, but
I used to attribute it to John Wooden because it kind of fits with my basketball narrative. Yes. But no, it's Winston Churchill.
Oh my. There you go. Of course, it's Winston Churchill. My dad's telling me it's John Wooden. I actually ended up going to USC and probably broke his heart. But yes,
I've been saying John Wooden for a while. Yeah. But I think that it really embodies sort of how we approach things, is that success is never final. Like last year was last year, and this year is another year, and it's something else, and we're never resting on our laurels. And frankly, even if we wanted to, our ownership would never allow us to.
Yeah. So what does the future of the Golden State Warriors hold? What are you most excited about?
I think the fact that Joe's vision for the Golden State Warriors is bigger than I can imagine, and that's exciting for me because working, it's truly a professional privilege to work with the people that I work with every day, right? And knowing that we're all going to be pushed to be greater than we think we can be is really exciting. And so, the vision of being, an entertainment company bigger and broader than just a basketball team is something that we're constantly thinking about how to fulfill.
Well, we are looking forward to it, and I just so appreciate you coming on the NetSuite podcast and talking about all of this. This is so cool to talk about. You told me earlier, you're like, don't be that, it's not that cool. I'm like, actually, no, this was really great. You did you taught so much. So thank you so much for being on with us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, it sounds like we have a lot to keep an eye out for when it comes to the Golden State Warriors, not only on the basketball court, but in the fan experience, entertainment, and more. Thank you so much to Jennifer Cabalquinto for joining us on this episode of the NetSuite podcast. We also want to thank our editors over at Lampstand and all you listeners for tuning in. Good luck to your team during NBA playoffs. Adios.
You just listened to the NetSuite podcast. Be sure to tune in every week with more NetSuite developments, stories, and insights into the benefits of one integrated system to help you run your business.